Salt looks simple, ordinary, even innocent, but in Jewish wisdom, it is the quiet guardian of every blessing. I learned this truth the hard way, in a season when I felt shadowed by something I couldn't name. Opportunities slipped, my spirit felt heavy, and every step forward seemed to echo with resistance. That was when an old rabbi looked at me with a knowing softness and said, "Salt is not for flavor, it is for protection." From that moment, I began seeing what I had been blind to. Spiritual attacks are rarely dramatic, they are subtle. They come as exhaustion without reason, confusion without cause, or a sudden heaviness in places where your life once flowed freely. And poverty, yes, poverty, often begins as spiritual erosion long before it appears in your bank account. Rabbis understood this. That is why salt became their first line of defense. Salt is permanence. Salt is purity.
Salt is covenant. And when a blessing is placed within a covenant, spiritual harm cannot cling to it. That was the secret they guarded across generations. But before I guide you deeper into that ancient shield, I want you to take the first step with me. Comment the phrase, "I protect my blessings with purity." Do this because words create alignment. When you speak them publicly, you declare that your life is no longer unguarded. You signal to the unseen world that your prosperity is not wandering, but watched. And from that declaration, something powerful begins to shift. But perhaps the most surprising truth is this: spiritual attacks target wealth first. Not because money is the goal, but because money is the mirror. When your inner world is clouded, your outer world responds. The rabbis taught that negative energy does not need permission. It slips into the cracks of an unprotected life. Salt seals those cracks. Salt clears the static around your intentions. Salt reminds the spirit that it is not defenseless. I began placing a small bowl of salt in my home, not a superstition, but as a signal, to myself, to heaven, to anything that wished me harm, that my blessings were no longer available for sabotage. And slowly, the heaviness lifted. Opportunities that had collapsed began returning in new forms. My clarity returned, sharp and grounded. It felt as if something ancient had risen to stand beside me. And as I walked deeper into this wisdom, I discovered something even more unsettling. Spiritual attacks are not random. They follow patterns. They aim directly at the areas where your light is most needed. And the first thing they attempt to dim is your capacity to create, expand, and prosper. Which brought me to the next revelation, one that shook me awake. If salt protects, then what exactly is attacking? And why does it go after wealth before anything else? The answer is older than scripture, older than ritual, older even than fear itself. The truth is this: spiritual attacks rarely show themselves as storms. They arrive as gentle shifts, small enough to ignore, powerful enough to reroute an entire destiny. And the first place they strike is wealth. Not because money is the enemy, but because money is the expression of flow. When your spiritual channels tighten, prosperity feels it first. Rabbis have said for generations that darkness always aims at light, and wealth in Jewish mysticism is a form of light. It glows through your actions, your ideas, your opportunities, your confidence. And anything that wishes to dim you will strike where your glow is most visible. But these attacks do not come as curses. They come as whispers. Hesitation, self-doubt, comparison, unusual fatigue, doors closing without explanation. They come as people who envy your progress, sending subtle waves of resistance without saying a word. They come as sudden confusion in areas where you once felt certain. Poverty begins this way, not in the wallet, but in the spirit. I once met a man whose success evaporated in silence. Nothing dramatic happened, no crisis, no betrayal. Only small things breaking, small delays stacking, small doubts growing. When he went to a rabbi for guidance, he expected a financial plan. Instead, the rabbi handed him salt. "Your wealth is under spiritual pressure," he said. "Not from what you did, but from what has been directed at you." The man refused to believe it.
until his life began to feel heavier each week, as if an invisible hand pressed against everything he tried to build. And this is the pattern.
Spiritual attacks target clarity first, ambition second, opportunity third. By the time a person notices money slipping, the attack has already passed through several layers of their life. Salt enters precisely at this point, before the consequences become material. Salt interrupts the energetic collapse. Salt stops the leak before the blessing drains. Salt stands as a barrier, not against people, but against the unseen weight behind their thoughts and eyes. Contrast makes this clearer. Two people can share the same skill, the same effort, the same chance, yet one rises and the other stalls. The difference is rarely logical. It is spiritual. One walks under a clear sky, the other walks under a quiet storm. Rabbis knew this long before psychology gave it language. They taught that spiritual turbulence interferes with decision-making, intuition, and timing. Miss one moment of alignment and an entire opportunity dissolves. But what shocked me the most was realizing how predictable these attacks are. They follow the same cycle everywhere: subtle heaviness, small obstacles, mental fog, financial stagnation. And just when the person begins to think it's bad luck, the pattern solidifies into a season of scarcity, which leads us straight into the mystery that explains why salt is the cure. Because long before salt became a kitchen staple, it carried a divine assignment, one that tied it directly to prosperity itself. And that assignment was sealed in something ancient, unbreakable, and almost forgotten: the covenant of salt. Long before salt touched food, it touched the sacred. Rabbis call it the covenant of salt, an agreement older than kingdoms, older than poverty, older than fear. When I first heard this teaching, I felt a shiver, as if some ancient part of me recognized a truth my mind had forgotten. Salt was never meant to be ordinary. It was crafted as a symbol of permanence, of blessings that cannot decay, of protection that does not weaken, of prosperity that does not slip away once granted. In the days of the temple, every offering, every prayer, every sacrifice, every act of devotion was required to be touched by salt, not for taste, but for endurance. Salt preserved the intention, sealed the spiritual channel, and ensured that nothing impure could cling to the blessing in transit. The message was clear: what is salted is protected. What is salted cannot rot. What is salted endures. That is why this covenant became the cornerstone of Jewish protection rituals. Wealth in this tradition is not measured by numbers, but by stability. Anyone can receive abundance, but only those who understand spiritual preservation can keep it. Salt teaches this silently. It reminds us that prosperity is not a moment. It is a covenant, a continual alignment between your efforts and the divine flow around you. Without this alignment, wealth behaves like water poured into cracked stone. It disappears fast and without explanation. I remember a woman who told me her blessings always came with an expiration date. Every time she rose, something collapsed. Every time she gained, something slipped. She believed she was unlucky. But the rabbi who listened to her story simply nodded and said, "Your blessings were never salted." She didn't understand at first, but when she began to use salt consciously, on her table, near her doorway, in moments of prayer, her life began to shift. Not because the salt had power on its own, but because she entered the covenant it represented, the commitment to spiritual endurance. This covenant also explains why certain people prosper consistently while others experience unstable cycles of gain and loss. It is not talent, it is not timing, it is not luck. It is the presence or absence of spiritual preservation. Salt represents the discipline of tending to the unseen forces that influence the visible world. And those who neglect this discipline often find their wealth slipping through invisible cracks. But here is where the story sharpens. The covenant of salt does more than preserve blessings. It exposes decay. It reveals where negative energy has already begun to infiltrate. And that revelation can be uncomfortable because it means facing the subtle ways your prosperity has been under attack long before you noticed anything wrong. Which brings us to a truth most people never see coming: how spiritual negativity begins its work, not with destruction, but with slow, silent spoilage. And salt is the only force ancient rabbis trusted to stop that rot before it consumes an entire destiny. Spiritual decay is the most dangerous kind because it announces itself softly. It doesn't roar, it whispers. It shows up in small hesitations, in opportunities that slip for no logical reason, in a sudden heaviness where energy once flowed. Rabbis compare it to food left without salt. Nothing dramatic happens at first, but silently, invisibly, the rot begins. And by the time you smell the decay, it has already spread. Prosperity works the same way. Blessings spoil when they are unprotected. Envy from others, fear from within, lingering resentment, spiritual interference. These forces seep into a person's field the way moisture seeps into wood. Slowly, silently, steadily. They weaken the structure of your confidence. They cloud your intuition. They corrode your sense of direction. And eventually, they touch your wealth. Not by stripping it away instantly, but by dulling the clarity that creates it. I once witnessed this in the life of a man whose business was thriving. He had talent, discipline, and a path that seemed unstoppable. But week by week, he grew heavier. He brushed it off as exhaustion, yet the heaviness thickened. His decisions became hesitant. His opportunities grew thin. Nothing catastrophic happened, but the slow erosion was unmistakable. When he sought guidance, the rabbi placed a small dish of salt in his palms and said, "Your blessing is spoiling, protect it." That moment changed everything for him, because he realized the decay had begun long before anything external went wrong. Something invisible had been eating away at his prosperity. Salt in Jewish mysticism is the great interrupter of spiritual rot. It dries the moisture where negativity hides. It purifies the energetic field where envy has begun to settle. It stops the spoil before it spreads. This is why salt appears in doorways, on tables, and corners of homes. It is not superstition. It is a declaration that decay has no permission here. It is a boundary between your blessings and the forces that attempt to contaminate them. Salt tells spiritual interference, you are seen and you are blocked. But salt also reveals what is already damaged. When you begin using it, you may feel shifts, old fears rising, dormant emotions surfacing, forgotten doubts appearing again. That is not a setback. It is the rot being exposed so it can be removed. Only what is revealed can be healed. Still, understanding the decay is not enough. You must understand how ancient rabbis actively reversed it, how they used salt not just to stop spoilage, but to cleanse environments, lift poverty energy, and block spiritual attacks before they reach your life. And the rituals they used are far more powerful, far more intentional, and far more transformative than most people realize. When the elders taught me the salt rituals, they did not speak with mystique or theatrics. They spoke with the calm confidence of people who had seen darkness come and go, and had learned how to keep their homes untouched by it. These rituals, they said, were not inventions, they were inheritances, passed down quietly, practiced faithfully, and trusted completely. Because salt, when used with intention, becomes a spiritual boundary that nothing unclean can cross. The first ritual is deceptively simple, placing salt in the corners of a home. Each corner represents a direction, a gate, a potential entrance for energy that is not aligned with your purpose. Salt in the corners is like drawing lines on a map that say, "Here, only blessing walks." It absorbs heaviness, dissolves spiritual residue, and reminds the unseen that your space is guarded. I remember the first night I did this, the air felt different by morning, lighter, clearer, as if a tension I hadn't noticed had finally exhaled. Another ritual is salting the table before bread. This one is ancient, rooted in the belief that a table is a miniature altar, a place where sustenance becomes sacred.
Salt on the table protects the energy of provision. It keeps poverty away from the door. Rabbis teach that when salt touches bread, lack cannot enter the home easily. This is why, during storms of adversity, families maintained the practice with unshakable devotion. It was not a habit, it was an anchor. There are also moments when salt is carried personally, in small pouches tucked into pockets or bags. Not as charm, but as a reminder, you are protected. The world may carry chaos, but you carry clarity. This personal salt becomes a spiritual compass, grounding your mind when fear attempts to rise. Many people describe an immediate shift, a steadiness, a quiet strength, as if the ritual awakens something ancestral within them. Still, the most powerful ritual is not physical but intentional. Holding salt in your hands while declaring protection over your life creates a field of spiritual coherence. It aligns your words, your mind, and your energy. The rabbis call this sealing the blessing. They believed, and I have seen, that a blessing sealed in salt does not slip, does not spoil, does not scatter. It stays with you. It grows with you. These rituals, simple as they appear, are woven with layers of meaning. They clean the external space while reorganizing the internal one. They lift the fog from your thoughts and sweep the residue from your emotions. And as this cleansing deepens, something remarkable happens. The mind begins to change. The spirit begins to settle. The heaviness begins to fall away. Because salt does more than block harm, it rewrites your inner landscape. And to understand how transformation truly begins, we must step into the psychology behind these rituals, where the mind meets the mystical and both become one. Long before psychology gave language to the mind's hidden architecture, rabbis already understood a truth that modern science now confirms. The external ritual is only half the work. The other half happens inside. Salt may sit in your corners or rest on your table, but its real power is activated in your consciousness. It is the shift that occurs when your environment reflects purity and your mind begins to mirror it. Because prosperity does not bloom in mental chaos, it blooms in clarity. Rituals with salt lower internal turbulence. They interrupt cycles of anxiety. They cool emotional overwhelm, and they signal the brain that order has returned. When a person feels protected, even before protection becomes visible, their nervous system relaxes. And when the nervous system relaxes, intuition heightens, decisions sharpen, opportunities become recognizable. This alone can alter the trajectory of someone's wealth. Psychologists call this symbolic anchoring. Rabbis call it spiritual grounding. Both speak of the same phenomenon. The mind assigns meaning to objects, and that meaning shapes perception. When salt symbolizes purity and protection, the mind becomes more confident, more focused, more receptive. Suddenly, you are no longer reacting to life, you are directing it. Think of envy, resentment, and spiritual attacks not only as metaphysical intrusions, but also as mental disruptions. They pull your attention away from your own purpose and into the fog of comparison or fear. When your mind is scattered, your blessing becomes vulnerable. You miss signals, you misjudge timing, you lose momentum. Poverty often begins in these mental fractures, not in the external world. Salt, however, steadies the inner world. It creates an anchor point the mind can return to whenever chaos threatens to intrude. I have seen people place a small bowl of salt on their desk and, without any mystical language, experience more productivity and less doubt. The ritual worked not because of superstition, but because it reorganized the psychological environment. The salt whispered, focus, clarity, protection, and the mind obeyed. There is also a cleansing aspect that modern therapists would call emotional release. When someone integrates salt rituals into their life, old fears surface. Dormant insecurities rise. Hidden tension loosens. This is not regression, it is purification. You cannot elevate your prosperity while carrying emotional residue that contradicts it. Salt reveals what must be released, and the mind, now aware, begins to let go. Over time, this inner realignment creates a person who is harder to spiritually destabilize. Their emotions respond slower to negativity. Their thoughts recover faster from doubt. Their sense of direction becomes harder to disrupt. This inner resilience is the soil where wealth, true wealth, can finally take root. But nothing confirms the power of these transformations more than witnessing them in the lives of real people. People whose stagnation broke, whose heaviness lifted, whose prosperity awakened after years of silence. Their stories are proofs, and their proofs reveal patterns that echo the very principles we've been unfolding. Stories carry a kind of truth that theories cannot touch. They reveal the lived dimension of spiritual principles, the texture, the weight, the breadth of transformation. And when it comes to salt rituals, the stories I've witnessed are not symbolic. They are tangible shifts in the lives of people who felt trapped in cycles of stagnation, heaviness, or poverty. Their experiences proved what rabbis have said for centuries. When the spiritual atmosphere changes, the material world follows. The first story is of a woman named Leah, whose life felt like a long hallway of closed doors. No matter how hard she worked, opportunities dissolved at the last moment. She carried a quiet sense of defeat, as if something unseen pushed against every step forward. A rabbi told her to place salt in the four corners of her home and repeat a simple intention. I release what blocks me. I invite what grows me. Within weeks, she noticed emotional shifts, lighter mornings, sharper decisions, a calm she hadn't felt in years. Shortly after, a job that had previously rejected her reopened an offer. The door had never been closed. It was her atmosphere that had been clouded. Another story comes from David, a man crushed under the weight of generational poverty. He believed he was cursed, destined to repeat the financial failures of those before him. A teacher instructed him to keep a small pouch of salt in his pocket for 40 days, touching it whenever fear rose. He did. And to his astonishment, his fear slowly lost its authority. He felt grounded, stable. Ideas came. Confidence returned. Within months, he started a side business that grew faster than he could track. The curse he feared was never a curse. It was unprocessed fear, and salt gave his mind the anchor to break it. Then there was Amira, someone burdened by the envy of those around her. She felt watched, drained, diminished. Her finances fluctuated wildly, and her peace was fragile. A mentor taught her to sprinkle salt on her table before every meal and to speak gratitude aloud. She resisted at first, feeling silly, but soon she felt a noticeable clearing, as if invisible tension lifted from the air. Her relationship stabilized, her energy returned, her finances slowly followed. What changed wasn't luck. It was the weight of envy no longer landing on her spirit. What these stories share is not coincidence. It is pattern. Again and again, I have seen people recover clarity, courage, and prosperity after applying salt rituals with intention. The external world shifted because their internal world was no longer fragmented. Their atmosphere became aligned, and aligned atmospheres pull blessings like magnets. But perhaps the most beautiful revelation is this: you do not need to be Jewish to benefit from these principles. Salt rituals are ancient, but the laws behind them are universal, woven into the very structure of human consciousness and spiritual energy. And to understand their full reach, we must explore why these teachings work for anyone willing to practice them with sincerity. One of the greatest misunderstandings about Jewish spiritual practices is the belief that their power belongs only to those born into the tradition. But salt does not recognize borders, bloodlines, or backgrounds. Its symbolism, purity, clarity, preservation is universal. It speaks a language older than any culture, rooted in the structure of the world itself. This is why the teachings surrounding salt ripple across humanity. They resonate with the architecture of the human spirit. When rabbis pass down these practices, they are not sharing secrets for a single people. They are sharing patterns that apply to anyone living in a world of unseen influences and internal battles. Salt works because consciousness works. Ritual works because the mind responds to meaning. And spiritual protection works because every soul, regardless of origin, is susceptible to heaviness, envy, confusion, and misalignment. These are not cultural problems. They are human problems. Poverty, too, begins as a universal spiritual imbalance. Financial struggle often emerges from internal fragmentation long before it becomes external. I once taught these principles to someone with no connection to Judaism at all, a young man overwhelmed by anxiety and chronic financial setbacks. He listened skeptically at first, but agreed to place a bowl of salt near his front door and speak a simple intention each morning. Within a month, he reported feeling clearer, more grounded, less emotionally scattered. He made better choices. He recognized opportunities he had previously overlooked. His income didn't explode overnight, but it grew steadily, following the rhythm of his newfound inner stability. Salt did not change his destiny. It changed his alignment, and his destiny followed. Another woman, raised in a completely different tradition, found herself weighed down by the jealousy of coworkers. She carried this heaviness like a silent burden. When she learned the practice of salting the table before meals, symbolically preserving her blessings, she felt a shift. Meals became moments of grounding rather than distraction. The envy around her lost its power. Her motivation returned, and with it, a promotion she had been bypassed for twice. She did not adopt Judaism, she adopted clarity. And clarity is a law that transcends culture. This is why ancient teachings emphasize universal principles rather than exclusive ownership. Salt purifies because purity is universal. Salt protects because boundaries are universal. Salt preserves because the desire for stable blessings is universal. And when your inner atmosphere becomes clean and aligned, your spiritual field strengthens and your external life reorganizes around that strength. These teachings work because humans are meaning-driven beings. When you assign intention to an action, placing salt, speaking words, cleansing a corner, you awaken psychological and spiritual forces that were dormant. The ritual becomes a mirror reflecting who you choose to be. Someone protected, someone grounded, someone ready for abundance. And once the universality of this wisdom becomes clear, the next step is inevitable. Integrating salt not as a symbol, but as a daily practice, a rhythm, a discipline of protection and expansion woven into your life. Because consistency is what turns understanding into transformation. Integration is where wisdom becomes reality. Salt, as powerful as it is symbolically and spiritually, transforms your life only when it becomes part of your rhythm, woven into the small moments, the transitions, the thresholds of your day. Rabbis often said that protection is not an event, it is a practice. Wealth is not a miracle, it is a maintenance. And spiritual clarity is not a gift, it is a discipline. Salt becomes effective when your life begins to move in harmony with its meaning. The first daily practice is simple. Keep a small dish of salt near the entrance of your home. Each time you walk in or out, pause for a breath and let the salt remind you that your space is protected, that your energy stays with you, and that heaviness must remain at the threshold. Over time, this tiny ritual resets your nervous system and marks your home as a sanctuary, emotionally, spiritually, and energetically. Another practice is weekly cleansing. Choose one day, traditionally the eve of rest, but any day works, and sprinkle a thin line of salt along the baseboards or corners of your rooms. As you do, speak softly. May nothing that drains me remain. This practice lifts stagnant energy, the emotional dust that accumulates in unseen corners. Many people report feeling lighter immediately, as if their home exhales after holding tension for too long. A more personal ritual is carrying salt with you in a small pouch. Touch it when anxiety rises, when fear whispers, when envy from others feels heavy in the air.
That moment of contact grounds you, reminding your mind that you are not undefended. The psychological effect alone is profound. Your brain shifts from threat to clarity, from panic to presence. And presence is where good decisions are born. Then there is the transformative practice of pairing salt with spoken intention. Each morning, sit with a pinch of salt in your hand and declare your alignment. I choose clarity. I choose protection. I choose abundance. Salt absorbs the emotional residue you release and carries your intentions with sharp precision. Over time, your words stop being hopeful wishes and become energetic commands your spirit aligns with. Finally, incorporate salt into your meals consciously. A small gesture, touching the salt before eating, signals gratitude for provision and seals the blessing of sustenance. This creates an unbroken relationship between nourishment and preservation, a spiritual contract that poverty cannot easily cross. What begins as ritual soon becomes identity. You begin to carry yourself differently, more grounded, less shaken by negativity, more resistant to emotional storms. Your clarity heightens, your intuition strengthens. Your atmosphere becomes inhospitable to spiritual attacks and inviting to prosperity. But all these practices point toward a deeper truth. Salt is not the ultimate source of protection. It is only the symbol, the doorway. The true protection comes from the philosophy that shapes how you stand in the world: humble, vigilant, open to blessing, committed to purity. And to understand that final layer, we must step into the heart of Jewish prosperity wisdom. As we reach this final chapter, everything begins to weave into a single thread, a thread that runs through Jewish wisdom like a pulse. Abundance is not earned by force, but received through alignment. The rituals with salt, the cleansing practices, the spoken intentions, the boundaries against envy, they are not isolated acts. They are expressions of a deeper philosophy, that prosperity flows wherever purity and humility make a home. Rabbis have whispered this truth for centuries, and now it sits before you, steady and ancient. Humility in this tradition is not self-diminishing. It is spaciousness. It is the openness that allows blessing to rest without resistance. When you walk with humility, spiritual attacks lose their grip, because there is no inflated ego for them to cling to. When you walk with humility, poverty cannot hold you, because you are constantly evolving, constantly growing, constantly receptive. Salt symbolizes this humility. It is simple, small, unadorned, yet indispensable. It reminds the spirit that greatness is not loudness, but clarity. Protection, too, is a philosophy. It is the choice to guard your atmosphere with intention rather than react to life blindly. It is the awareness that not every energy around you is meant to touch you. Salt stands as the physical emblem of this boundary, pure, incorruptible, unwavering. But the true boundary is internal, the refusal to let negativity settle, the discipline to cleanse your mind, the courage to release old patterns. And then there is abundance, the final expression of this wisdom. Abundance is not merely wealth. It is stability, peace, and a life where blessings do not leak through unseen cracks. Word's teachings emphasize that abundance begins in speech. When you say, I choose clarity, I choose protection, I choose abundance, you are not declaring desire, but stepping into spiritual responsibility. Words are covenant. Words are creation. Words are the salt of the soul. To seal this journey, I offer you the ancient blessing recited across generations, a blessing that carries protection, expansion, and peace in every syllable. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord shine his face upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift his countenance upon you and grant you peace. Let these words settle into your life like salt settling into water, disappearing on the surface but transforming everything beneath. Carry them as shield and compass. And when you rise tomorrow, rise with intention, knowing your atmosphere is no longer unguarded and your prosperity no longer exposed. Before we part, there is one final act of alignment.
Share this wisdom with 3 people whose spirits feel heavy or unprotected, not as a favor, but as a continuation of the covenant you have entered. When you help lift another, your own path widens. Blessings never travel alone. They multiply wherever they are given room to breathe.